Hi there, grade 8. Our topic for today is still factoring, and what we're going to factor are quadratic trinomials. So, first, we have to answer this question: what are quadratic trinomials? If you remember last time, we were able to factor perfect square trinomials. So, this time, we're going to work on factoring quadratic trinomials. So, we're going to factor a polynomial with three terms. That's why it's trinomial. And then quadratic in the form. So the degree is 2. So these are all examples, class, of quadratic trinomials. So look at the degree of each polynomial. So the degree is 2. And by inspection, each polynomial here has three terms. So before we proceed with factoring these quadratic trinomials, let us recall how we multiply two binomials. For example, how do we multiply x plus a to x plus b such that class a and b here are real numbers. So if you remember, we can work on the product of these two binomials by working on FOIL. So working on FOIL is working on the product of each of these letters, FOIL. So F stands here for the product of the first terms. So we're going to multiply x to x here. So we have x squared. And then O here would mean multiplying the two outer terms. So we're going to multiply x to b. So we have bx here. And I stands for the product of the inner terms. So we have a times x. And then last for the L, so we're going to work on the product of the last terms. So we have AB here. And then combining like terms, we know that we can combine the middle terms here, BX and AX, since they are similar terms, and we assign B and A as the coefficients of X, which are all real numbers, so we can combine BX and AX. So we have X squared plus quantity A plus B, X plus AB. In relation to this binomial factors class, we were able to obtain x squared and AB here by working on the product of the first terms and the last terms respectively. And the middle term here, quantity AB, A plus BX, is the result after we have combined the OI here, the product of the outer terms and the inner terms. Now, what we're going to do in factoring quadratic trinomial is we will be working backwards in relation to this FOIL, multiplying two binomials. So in here, we are expecting that the factors of these quadratic trinomials are two binomial factors. So for us to work on the factors, first, let's work on this first quadratic trinomial. So we're going to identify the factors of the first term and the factors of the last term, which is usually a constant term. So for x squared, we know that the only factors are x and x. While for 14, it can be 1 and 14, 2 and 7. Now, we have to note that negative 14 is a product of two unlike signs integers. So, for example, when you multiply two unlike signs, like you multiply positive to negative, negative to positive, this will result to a negative product. So, this is one consideration that we're going to um, accept. Okay, so we're going to consider. So, we're going to think of a factor of negative 14 such that either of the factor is positive, the other one is negative, and vice versa. And we have to consider also the middle term. Going back here, this middle term, as what I've mentioned, is the result after we have combined the product of the OI. So we combined BX and AX, so we resulted to quantity A plus BX. So this is what we're going to consider also here. Now, again, the factors of this quadratic trinomial, as what I've mentioned, are two binomial factors. So we're going to place x and x here because we don't have any other option as regards to the factors of x squared. And then we're going to select from negative 14, we're going to select either 1 and 14, 2 and 7. Now, this negative 5x here, this is the result after we have combined the OI. So when we say combine, we either add or subtract. Now, if we have this negative middle term, this would mean that we have combined either two same like signs which are both negative, and we combine two unlike signs such that the factor of greater value is negative. So I'm referring to the factors of negative 14. So here, we are going to think of a factor of 14 or factors of 14 such that when we get the difference, the result is 5. Why we have to consider the difference? Look at again the middle term. The middle term is a minus sign. So we are going to consider combining two unlike signs instead of combining two like signs, two negative addends. Why? Because this one is negative. And the factors of negative 14 is one negative factor and one positive factor. So we're going to consider factors of 14 such that the difference would be 5. And between the two pairs of factors of 14 here, we're going to consider 2 and 7. So if we're going to place 2 here and we're going to place 7 here, and the bigger factor should be with a sign of negative, and the other one is positive because this one is negative. So by inspection, if we get the product of the OI here, I mean the product of the outer terms, it's negative 7x, and the product of the inner term is 2x. When you add negative 7x to 2x, this will result to negative 5x. So therefore, the factors of this quadratic trinomial are x plus 2 and x minus 7. So that's how we work on the factors. Okay, so for the second example, we have 3x squared plus 13x plus 4. Now, we are lucky that this one is a prime number. So the factors are the number itself and 1. For 4, we only have few factors for 4. So here, we will consider 3 and 1. And here, we will consider 2 and 2 or 1 and 4. Now, another thing that we have to consider is everything here is positive. So if everything is positive here, so we are considering a pair of positive factors for 4. Now, if this is positive 4, we're expecting either that the factors of positive 4 here is a pair of negative and a pair of positive factors. Because when we multiply like signs will result to positive. But then, we will disregard a pair of negative factors since the middle term here is positive. So, working on the factors, so this is 3x. This one is x. Now we're going to work on the middle term 13. Since this is 13, we would consider 1 and 4 to come up with 13. And maybe we place 4 here so that the product of the outer terms becomes 12x, and that is near 13x. So we just need 1x, and that's actually the other factor if you consider 4. So we have 1. So everything is positive since the quadratic trinomial is positive. So the product of the inner terms class is x. When you combine the two, it's 13x. Therefore, the factors of this trinomial are 3x plus 1. The other one is x plus 4. Now, you can check whether the factors are correct by working on the product of these two factors. And if you come up with a given, so we can say that these two factors are really correct. Okay, for this third quadratic trinomial, now the factors of 10 are 2 and 5. We also have 1 and 10. Now, 7 is a prime number, so the only factor for 7 is 7 and 1. Okay, so we have to note also that this is negative 7. Okay, so we're expecting a pair of negative and positive, or positive and negative factors for negative 7. Now, this is quite difficult since the coefficient of x squared is 10. So we're going to consider the factors of the first term as well as the factors, the sign, including the middle term. So this is basically class trial and error. But of course, we have basis of working on the factors. We will not just guess. So the goal here is to limit the possible options so we can arrive with the correct factors. Now, we have two binomial factors. If we're going to consider, for example, 2x and 5x, okay? Now, we have 7 here. So, let us disregard the sign first. Let's consider the factors of 7, which are 7 and 1. And if we place 7 here, take note that these are the inner terms, and the product of these inner terms is 35x. And 35x is near negative 33x. So, meaning, we are just going to make this negative. Okay? So this would become negative 35x. And this is very near negative 33x. And the other factor of 7, aside from 7 itself, is 1. Okay. Now, we have made 7 negative, so it's a rule that we have to make 1 as positive factor. Now, take note that the product of the outer terms here is 2x. So when we combine 2x and negative 35x, the result is negative 33x. So the factors are 2x minus 7 and 5x plus 1. Okay, so more factors here, more quadratic trinomials to be factored. Now, if you see class that in the quadratic trinomial, we have common factor among the three terms. So the best thing that we can do is to move out that common factor. For instance, in number 1, 5 is common to all the terms. So we will divide all the terms by the common factor, which is 5. And that 5 would become one of the factors then. So we will divide 5x squared by 5. So we have x squared. And then 10x here by 5. So we have, I rather 10x. So we have 2x here. And then negative 15 by 5. So we have negative 3. Now, it would be easier for us to factor this quadratic trinomial because the coefficient of the first term is 1 and negative 3 is a prime number, so it's easier for us. Even the middle term class is only 2, I mean the coefficient. So for us not to forget that 5 is one of the factors, so we have to rewrite 5 here. And then we are expecting two binomial factors from this trinomial factor. So this would be x, and then this would be x also. Now this is negative, so we're expecting a negative and a positive factor. And this one is positive. The middle term is positive. So positive would mean adding two positive factors or adding two unlike factors. So we would consider adding two unlike factors since this one is negative 3. And of course, the only factor for 3 are 1 and 3. So we have to come up with a positive middle term. So we will make the bigger factor 3 to be positive, and this one is negative. So that when we combine the product of the outer and the inner term here, this will result to 2x. So these are the factors. Likewise, in 2 here class, this trinomial has a common factor, which is 3. So we will move out that common monomial factor and we will divide all these terms by 3. So this will be x squared, and then 3x divided by 3 will be x. Negative 6 divided by 3 will be negative 2. Again, this would be easier to factor. So we will rewrite 3 here since 3 is considered as one of the factors, and then two binomial factors representing this quadratic trinomial factor. So this is negative 2. So one factor should be positive, the other one is negative. And the middle term is positive, meaning the bigger factor must be positive than the um, lower factor should be negative. So this must be x plus 2, then the other one is x minus 1. So these are the factors. Okay, here, same with 1 and 2, this trinomial has common factor, and the common factor is 4x. So we will divide all the terms by 4x. So when we divide 4x cubed by 4x, we have x squared. And then we'll divide 28x squared by 4x. So we have 7x. And 40x there divided by 4x. So we have 10. So the next thing that we're going to do is to factor this trinomial factor. So don't forget to rewrite 4x since 4x is part of the factors or one of the factors. And then we have x and x here as factors of x squared. So for 10, we know that we can consider 1 and 10 as factors of 10, 2 and 5 as well. So this is positive. Everything is positive. So we're going to consider a positive factors for 10. Now, we're going to think of a pair of factors of 10 such that when we add the two, it will result to 7. So, we are going to consider 2 and 5. So, the sum of 2 and 5 is 7, and 2 times 5 is 10. So, this is x plus 2, then this is x plus 5. And these are the factors for number 3. So, here in number 3, these three terms have common factor, and the common factor is 3x. So we will divide each of the terms there by 3x. So when we divide 3x cubed by 3x, we have x squared. When we divide negative 9x squared by 3x, so we have negative 3x. When we divide 6x by 3x, we have 2. And then rewrite 3x. We're expecting two binomial factors, and the factor of x squared or x and x. And then the factors of 2 are 1 and 2 only. But look at the middle term, it's negative. So this is positive 2. So the factors of positive 2 are either a pair of positive or a pair of negative. So we're going to consider a pair of negative since the middle term is negative. So this one is x minus 1. The other one is x minus 2. And these are the factors for number 4. For number 5, seems like they do not have common factor. So we're going to consider the factors of 6, which are 2 and 3. The other one is 1 and 6. And for 18, we have 1 and 18, 2 and 9, and then 3 and 6. Okay. So a lot of choices for this, no? Now, negative 18. So we're expecting a negative factor and a positive factor for negative 18. Okay, so if we're going to consider like 2x here and then 3x here, and our goal is to reach this 23x for the middle term as the sum of the outer terms and the inner terms here. Okay. If we're going to consider 1 and 18, and then we place, for example, 18 here and 18 here, so that will give us huge number. Like if we place 18 here times 3, that would be twice or double 23x. And then 1 here. So, and vice versa as well. If we're going to place 18 here, that would be a huge number. Now, why not consider 2 and 9 since we are targeting 23 here, which will be expected sum of the outer and the inner terms. So if we're going to consider 2 and 9, for example, if we place 9 here, and then of course we will place 2 here. Now take note that the product of 9 and 3 is 27 and that is near 23. Okay? So we just need 4. We just need to less 4 to get 23. And luckily, the product of 2x and 2 here is 4. So we have to place positive here. So the product of 9 and 3x would be 27x. And then this will be minus sign so that the product of 2x and negative 2 here would be negative 4. And with that, we'll come up with a middle term equal to 23x. So therefore, the factors are 2x plus 9 and 3x minus 2. Okay, for this one, 20 is a large number, but the factors for x squared here would be x and x. And we have to recall again that the factors of positive number, particularly positive 20, are either a pair of positive or a negative factors. Since the middle term is negative here, so we're expecting a pair of negative factors. Now, this negative, again, negative sign for the middle term, we either added two negative signs or we added two unlike signs. So, of course, we will regard adding two negative like signs since that would match with the factors of positive. So, again, the factors of positive would be either a pair of positive and a pair of negative. So, we will be considering a pair of negative numbers. Now, from 20, which among the pairs of factors of 20 that would lead to a sum of 9. So what are the factors of 20? So we have 1 and 20, 2 and 10, 4 and 5. There. So among these pair of factors for 20, 4 and 5 when added equals 9. So we're looking for 4 and 5 and both must be negative. So, when you combine the product of the OI, I mean the outer terms, it's negative 5, this is negative 4, so we get negative 9x. So, these are really the factors of number 6 quadratic trinomial. Now, for number 7, we're expecting two binomial factors. So, the factors for 2 are 2x and x. And then for 49, we know that there's 1 and 49 and then 7 and 7. Since we're expecting negative 7x here, and then the sign of the last term is negative, so we're expecting 1 positive and 1 negative factors for negative 49. Okay, so we are not going to consider these factors since when we multiply 49 to either 2 or 1, it will be 49 or more than 49. So we're going to consider 7 and 7. So we'll place 7 here and 7. Take note that one should be positive, the other one is negative. And the middle term here is negative. So the product of either outer and inner term should have a negative value. So we would consider placing the negative sign or the subtraction operation here on the second factor, since this will result to negative um, 14x, and the product of 7 and x will be 7x. So when we combine the two, we'll get negative 7x. So this will be plus. So the factors for number 7 are 2x plus 7, and then the other one is x minus 7. Okay? For number 8 class, now the factors of 5 are 5 and 1, because 5 is prime number, as well as 7 is a prime number, so its factors are only 7 and 1. So we place either 5x here or on the second factor, okay? And then 7. Now, look at the middle term. It's negative 36x, okay? So, meaning we're going to consider two negative factors for 7. So, one is negative 7, the other one is negative 1. Since this is 36, of course, we will place 7 here so that the product of the outer terms would be 35, negative 35x, and this one is negative 1. So when we combine negative 35x and negative x, this will result to negative 36x. So the factors are 5x minus 1 and x minus 7. Okay, so number 9, um, let us write the solution for number 9 here. So the factors of 2x squared are x. The other one is 2x. And then for negative 15, so since the middle term here is negative x, so negative 1, so this is just a small number. So we're going to consider 3 and 5 instead of 15 and 1 here. So as to placing 3 and 5, so we have to work on x and 2x here. Okay, and then this is negative, so one is negative, the other one is positive. Okay, so if we will place 5 here, here, and then 3 here, okay, so this is 6x. I mean, the product of 3 and 2x is 6x, and then this is 5x. If we less the 2, that would give us x. But we want negative x. So we have to make this as negative and this as positive. So this would become negative 6x, and this would become positive 5x. So when we combine the two, it's negative x. So the factors are x minus 3 and 2x plus 5 for number 9. Now in number 10, so everything is positive here, and 7 is a prime number, and the factors for x squared are x and x. So we'll just place 1 and 7 here, and then everything is plus. So we'll come up with the middle term equal to 8x when we add x and 7x here. So these are really the factors. So this is how we work on the factors of quadratic trinomial.